Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story: a wild encounter with a rude customer. The second story: after I left, they had to hire 4 people to replace me. The third story: the government made the company pay me full-time salary for a year as punishment. The first story is Return of Cheese Man. I've been waitressing for years at a local small-town restaurant. Throughout the years I've worked here, I've gotten to know the customers very well. It's very important to note that this is an order at the counter and/or order at the table. A month or so ago, I had been working with 2 other waiters. I had taken notice that an older gentleman was asking a lot of questions to my coworker taking his order. Typically, this doesn't bother me because it is our job to ensure the customer is happy. But it was particularly busy this day and he was holding up the line. I had helped 4 to 5 customers, while my coworker was still helping the same gentleman. I was getting my customers' shakes and drinks done. I then heard my coworker ask me for help. The gentleman had been asking about whether or not the cheese on the burgers was real cheese. I proceeded to tell him that I could go check, but I was sure it was. As I was about to step away to check, he asked me to ask the cooks. I proceeded to tell him that they didn't stock the kitchen, nor did they speak English. A very annoyed customer stepped in and let the gentleman know the cheese was good and assured him it was real American cheese. We gave him his cheeseburger and that was the end of it for the day. He came back in tonight and I was working with 2 different coworkers from the previous night. He again ordered at the counter. My coworker began to help him, and as I walked by to grab my drinks, he said hello to me. I proceeded to just say a simple hi since I memorized all my orders and I didn't want to forget the drinks. I grab my drinks and get my table's orders. As I'm putting the orders into the machine, he once again asks my coworker if the cheese is real while making eye contact with me. I laughed to be polite in case he was trying to make a joke out of it. My coworker gets him the order and he leaves. About 5 to 10 minutes later, he comes back into the restaurant angry, holding the burger and saying the cheese isn't real, claiming we lied to him and changed our cheese from the last time he came in. The coworker who had taken the order went back into the kitchen and took a slice of cheese. Showing him it was real, he began to get angry and told her she lied. My coworker hands him the cheese. He pulls it apart and eats half of it before acknowledging it was real cheese. As he leaves, I can't help but giggle and I forget about it. After 15 minutes, he comes back in and I notice he's filming on his phone. He then proceeds to demand me to make him a chocolate ice cream cone. As I'm turned around getting it, he asks if I'm related to the family who owns the restaurant. I let him know I'm a family friend. I'm no longer putting on my customer service voice since he was being rude to me. He then asks if I spit in his food or did something to it since I giggled when he left. I laugh while making the cone and he makes a comment about it. I turn around to look at him and he starts to let me know he's going to get me fired because of my horrible customer service skills. I look at the camera while he's filming me and then I proceed to let him know I can call the owner down. He begins screaming at me saying that I'm going to lie to make him sound crazy and demands I give him the owner's number. I let him know the owner will be at the restaurant in the morning if he wants to have a chat with him. He once again starts screaming he's going to get me fired. I then begin to lose my patience. I let him know that I'm being as patient as I can and that I was going to stop being professional if his act continued. My other coworkers begin to step in, and customers begin to get up from their tables to check if everything is okay. He exclaimed once again that he'll do his best to get me fired, and that I was SHing at taking his order. While looking at the camera, I loudly exclaimed that I had never taken his order before. He makes his way for the door and I ask if he's still filming. He exclaimed he'll show my boss. I loudly exclaimed that I'm a minor and did not consent to being filmed. He begins walking back towards the counter and says he doesn't care. I looked him in the eyes and told him that he was an older guy who has a problem with a 17-year-old. I asked if he had anything better to do rather than yelling at a minor and he stormed off. I have no intent to ever see him again nor help him. I intend to refuse to serve him if he comes in. This cheese man is exactly like a bad movie character who made the decision that his primary objective was to harass waiters with questions about cheese. Why doesn't he just sit down and enjoy his drinks while he eats his burger? But no, he prefers to continue his excellent acting by talking about cheese. My admiration for your patience is unending, OP. Through the provision, you're able to deal with unusual customers, such as this Mr. Cheese, demonstrating that you're true professionals. I was wondering what your response was to his attempt to film you. Stunningly beautiful in every way. It's imperative that you never give someone the opportunity to make you feel uneasy or to place you in an awkward situation. And remember, no customer deserves your respect if they treat you with such disrespect. I hope that he'll come again and you'll tell him to his face what you think about his behavior in a professional manner and show him out the door. The second story is Underappreciated Project Manager. I worked as a project manager, estimator, IT, maintenance, and superintendent when needed, for a small family-owned construction company that was always underestimating work that was outside of their abilities. One such project, we were modifying an arroyo and building a bridge over it. Another PM was in charge of this project for about 4 months prior to handing it over to me. When I got the project, some of the dirt work and the piers were done. The remainder of the work needed to be done in under 2 months. That meant that I needed to find subs and get the following work done: place abutments, place precast planks, barrier walls, topping slabs, approach slab, wire enclosed riprap, concrete revetment, redo about 2 sections of 50 feet of road, guardrails, final grading, and seating. During this time, the owners of the company decided to undertake an approximately $5 million project that was out of town, that they needed to be at. Additionally, the superintendent that was on my project got moved to a different project. I was told to be the superintendent, so my 9-hour days turned into 11-hour days while being on salary. After completing approximately 95% of the work, it was about a week left with all but the guardrails done and final cleanup. The owners show up to the site while everyone was off-site at lunch. I was called and told to meet them at the site. When I pull up, they proceed to give me an A-chewing that I had been on site wasting their time and money. I was told that I had gotten nothing done in the 2 months that I was out there and that the site was unpresentable. They proceeded to point out piles of dirt that had yet to be graded, unraked areas that were still being worked on, and that guardrails were still not up, which was scheduled. I tried to state that things were still being worked on and that the guardrails were scheduled to be put in. I told them that we would be finished on time with no problem. They took this as me getting defensive and making excuses. They then proceeded to personally attack me, saying that I was just some punk-A kid who didn't know what he was doing, was a useless person, and that they were better off just hiring another labor to do my job. After the personal attack, they then told me that they would finish the project themselves, to leave the site, and that I was not welcome back. During the time that they were finishing up the project, I was called by one of the owners. I pick up my personal phone and answer as I always do. This is insert name. He then proceeds to give me another A-chewing that I picked up my phone wrong, and that I needed to escort someone to the project site, that I was kicked off of. I escort the person to the site and once again get an A-chewing that I should not pick up my phone like that, and he knew who he dialed, all while in front of the person that I just escorted on. It was at that point that I realized that I was not appreciated for what I did, and started looking for a new job. I found a new job, which would have been a demotion but paid better. So I put in my 2 weeks and continued my work as usual. It was not until my second to last day that the owner wanted to talk to me. I meet with him and said that he really didn't want to see me go, and that he really appreciated what I did for them and would do all but beg for me to stay. So I then told him at this new job I was going to be doing less work for more money. I knew that he wouldn't give me a raise, and I wasn't going to stay anyways. He then tells me, well, money is money, and that he wouldn't give me a raise to stay. I was close with the office manager, and keep in touch. Has now been 4 months since I left. They have hired 4 people to replace me, and the 4 new people are struggling to keep up with what I did on a regular basis. I have no regret in leaving, and wish I would have sooner. Wow, I support you 100%, author. Your story is incredible and gives us a look behind the scenes at some family-owned businesses. It can be frustrating to realize that your hard work and efforts are not appreciated as much as they should be, especially when you're trying your best to complete a project. And now you, a professional, who was entrusted with such an important project, are called a useless guy simply because you tried to protect your work. And the owners of the company, instead of supporting you and expressing gratitude for your efforts, chose to blame and humiliate you. This is unacceptable. And your decision to leave this company is simply a wise move. You deserve to have your work valued and respected, and I'm glad you found a new job that, while smaller, rewards you more generously for your efforts. And let the owners of this company remember you and your contribution every time they have to drag in 4 new employees to try and replace you. The third story is, they ran out of money and fired everyone without paying them, so I went to the government for help. My first real job was as a junior engineer for a startup out in White Rock, BC. It was this iTunes-like content delivery site that specialized in talk radio type stuff. It was an interesting idea when I found it. Take AM radio style talk and commentary and bring it into the 21st century. I figured why not? It's a coolish idea, and there's not a whole lot going on for an audio editor type right now in 2003 and applied. I got the job with the condition that I would have a 3-month internship trial period. I was living at home, just finished high school, and would be going to college in 2 years, so I was like, meh, sure, whatever, and did the trial time. I was fun-ish for the most part. I had a workstation and a little office and studio I shared with the web developer, and while he fixed bugs on the site and coded up new features, I would edit and upload the talk shows. They paid me a tiny bit over minimum wage, but I wasn't doing a whole lot other than hanging out with friends at night, so I didn't really care about the pay. The guys at the studio were funny and we operated just off of Marine Drive, had a view of the ocean, and we'd go down to the club and have lunch at the pub most days. For 6 months it was great. And then one day they came in and said they needed to relocate, and the payments it would be a few days late. So it was best not to come in for a few days. Apparently the lease had run up on their condo and studio and didn't want to renew. So we all grabbed our desk trinkets and things in the fridge and waited for their call. Then I got a call a week later, saying that the studio was being set up and that it would be about a week until it was all up and running, and at the same time the paychecks would be coming then. After a month of waiting, I called them and they said, "Oh yeah, sorry, we don't need your services any longer. Please don't call again," and hung up. Right then and there, I called the labor relations end of the government and told them what had happened. Flash forward 6 weeks and I'm in a hearing boardroom with some vicious government lawyers practically growling and foaming at the mouth at the owners of the startup sitting across the table from me, whom had only thought to bring their suits and smiles. After getting us to present our sides of our stories, they separated us and had the labor relations folks talk to us separately. Mostly them, though. I was told that my case was pretty simple. I was owed wages and they were refusing to pay for no good reason, and I was completely right in going to the government. After 15 minutes, the lawyer came back in and said, "Okay, so they don't have any money. They blew through their venture capital in the first year of operations, and when they couldn't ignore that, they spent it all. They fired everyone and have since been doing all the work themselves, hoping their investors wouldn't notice. They can't pay what you're owed at once, but you could take an item of equal value from the company. Do you want a car?" I said no and that I just wanted what I was owed. They went back to talk. After another 20 minutes, they came back in and said, "Okay," so we had a chat and explained how unimpressed we were at them basically ripping off honest young people. And as punishment, they've been ordered to pay you what would be the equivalent of a full-time wage for 1 full year to you in bi-weekly increments. I then decided that then was a good time to move out and go to college. This is real love for employees. It's important to understand that for some companies, honesty and respect are just empty words. Having gone bankrupt and throwing everyone out onto the street without pay, they don't even think about the consequences. But how interesting it is to see how justice comes in the guise of the state and distributes justice. I'm very happy for you, OP. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.